It makes me sad because at the end of everything, all we want is connection.
Meet Shannon Esra, an award-winning actress and performer who has captivated audiences in some of South Africa's most iconic productions.
Starting off anything, be it a career, business, you're starting from zero, especially from a financial point of view, because you have bills to pay, you have to support yourself.
Look, I mean, there was a time when I'd gotten myself into quite a lot of debt because of my paperwork.
In America,
And was that financial stress on top of trying to get a green card, on top of working several jobs at a time. You're going and auditioning, but nothing's really tracking there. Like, it was so uncomfortable. It was so hard. But it was something that I had to do.
how did you deal with the rejection?
It was the most crushing thing. I got my green card, and 2 weeks later, my management dropped me. Something just went click. I was like, that's it. I'm retiring. I'm giving up being an actor. This part of me is not dead. But successful people are the ones who have failed time and time and time and time again.
Do you feel like there's still some part of you that has to prove yourself?
Like, why did you do that? Why did you make that decision? Because there was a choice, because our behavior is the only thing that we really can control. Our behavior and our attitude towards things. I can't change my eye color. Not really. I mean, I can put contact lenses in, but I can't. There's certain things that you're not in control of changing, but you absolutely can decide consciously to be responsive as opposed to being reactive. Like, that is awareness.
And isn't it crazy that we choose to focus on the things that we can't control as opposed to
Well,
the
that's
things
the
that
whole
are in
thing,
our
because
control?
being out of control is complete. That's what breeds uncertainty, and uncertainty is what breeds anxiety. Whereas, and I mean, we're talking on a very high frequency, deeply spiritual plane here, where we're saying, I have to surrender my control, which is super hard because we want things to go the way that we want them, but very often we will always get what we need, not necessarily what we want. Because I think, and it's the old cliche of we're human, we're just spiritual beings having a human experience. I think everything is for our own evolution. And I don't just mean the singular, I mean collectively as well.
Surrendering is tough though.
It is so hard. It's so hard because there's so much pain. I mean, the human experience, I mean, if we look at it from like a Buddhist point of view, it's suffering, But for me, and I think we can, as human beings, we can often have the propensity to create more suffering. We almost become addicted to the wound. We become addicted to that thing. There's a negative payoff that keeps feeding into something deeper, which speaks to something deeply psychological and perhaps even pathological. And it's our responsibility as people to go and investigate that and understand it and to heal it. But healing is painful. So
Healing is hard. It's extremely hard.
You know what? If you're doing the work, if you're doing the things, it's like if you're getting up in the morning and you're going to the gym or you're going for a walk or you're going for a run, you're physically keeping your body active. And in keeping your body active, it kind of can almost quiet the mind. If you're listening to music or if you're doing breath work or if you're doing stretching or like I'm very bad with meditation. For me, like that's just something that I struggle with just sitting. Or as I've gotten older, it is better, but it's for me, meditation doesn't make me feel better. Everything just starts feeling a lot louder. It's like there's too much fuel and I'm not burning enough of it. But healing it's an active task.
I agree.
Like you have to.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah, and you've got to access parts of yourself and look at parts of yourself that you might not like what you're looking
100%.
at. And it's to not come at that with like a brutality, and it's not to come at that with. You've got to come at it with from a place of compassion and patience and love, because it doesn't. If these are the parts of you that are hurt, they've been hurt from very early from very early ages, like in your foundational years, that's 0 to 6, 0 to 9. There's been stuff that's happened, but you can't be a victim. Well, I mean, you can. You can do anything you want to. That's the point. But it doesn't help you to stay in a victim mindset.
100%.
It doesn't serve you.
But it's easy because the opposite is taking responsibility.
Which is really hard.
Which is hard. And
It's
that's why
hard.
so many people stay victims and blame as opposed to take responsibility because they can change.
Yeah, but some people just don't want to. Some people also just can't. It's like you can only change the willing, you can only change, you can only do, you can only be, you can only speak to somebody from the level of consciousness that you are at and vice versa. Doesn't matter if I'm as deep as an ocean. If I'm talking to a puddle of a person, I'm only going to get a puddle. That's just where it is. If I'm a puddle and I'm talking to a deep ocean, I'll never feel like I can't get there. I'll feel I don't know, I suppose it would trigger self-worth, self-esteem, self-confidence.
Insecurities.
And then all those insecurities and all those fears, and then you're like, well, I don't want to be around that person because I feel less than. But that's, I'm a very deep feeler, and I'm like I said, I'm really interested in what drives people. And I don't mean like what motivates you. I mean like really like what makes you make a decision, because so much of it is unconscious, subconscious. And when your subconsciousness and your unconsciousness become more conscious, it can also make things very difficult because you realize just how tough life is.
100%.
Like we're not living in an easy world. We're not living in an easy time. I don't think it's ever been easy. I think we've always lived in a very brutal society from the beginning of time. I mean, if we look at how empires have fallen, if we look at just, I don't know how humans have managed to survive as long as they have, but we have. But I feel like more of us should be more evolved.
But how do you get to the other side, if there's another side? I mean, for me...
Well, what other side?
Yeah, for me, the other side is less suffering. There's never going to be, you're never going to not suffer.
Of course, but
because, you're climbing this mountain, and the higher you get, there's going to be more challenges. There's going to be steeper rocks that you need to climb over. So you never really arrive. Like, I believe that, personally, death is the next kind of, this next phase. We can attain to something where we reach fulfillment, which just means that you're not reacting to anything or anyone. And you're so just at peace with everything that you do, with everything in your life. And I believe that we can attain that in this human experience. But is that arriving?
So I think the problem is that we've been taught we're going to arrive at a point and we're somehow going to be happy when we meet it. So in life, you're taught, okay, there are these milestones. So you're going to matriculate, and then you're going to feel amazing. And then you're going to go to university, and you're going to get a degree, and then you're going to get a job, and then you're going to meet someone, and you're going to get married, and you're going to have kids. And then you get married, and then you have the kids. And what happens when you sit there and you look at your life and go, and now what? And then it's like, oh, well, now we're always, there's this thing about an arrival. We're not airports, okay? So what we're forgetting is what's the journey in between. I think a lot of us it's there, the destination. But what happens when you reach the destination and you don't feel the way that you were supposed to? Like sometimes the end doesn't justify the means. Sometimes the end does justify the means. But we can't forget what we're doing in the meantime. I don't know. I think one can. I do think that the human existence is very, very hard. The world doesn't owe us anything. Okay, I think that suffering is inevitable, but I don't think you need to choose suffering. I think joy and happiness are also a choice. But I don't think happiness is the goal either. I think peace is the goal. Calm, peace. Just like you said,
Internal.
when things can happen around you and you're just like, okay, but that's surrender. And it's so hard. And if we could all get it right, we'd be doing it. But then I don't know what humanity necessarily looks like. Because with getting frustration, with being frustrated or, feeling trapped, or like that's also, those are growth points.
Pain.
We can't know one without the counterpoint.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can't, this is life. Life is complex and nuanced, and
it's a yin and a yang.
but you know what, and the thing is, yes, it is, and it's about balance. And I think as human beings, the goal is balance. And we are the only kingdom that is out of balance. We are constantly falling out of balance with ourselves because of ego. And ego also gets a very negative rap, but ego is really just, it's about holding you back. And that's where fear and insecurity live, is in that negative side of ego. And all of this is what I believe. Like, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but yes. So we'll have the yin yang, and if we look at it, it's about balance, and it's black and white, and it's the black within the white, and it's the white within the black, because it all encompasses. But also, life is also all in the gray, or actually, sometimes life is just a spectrum of color. I wish I could be. There are times when it would make my life very easier. Speak English. It would make my life a lot easier if I could just go, be a little bit more absolutist and say, this is this and this is this. But it's not. I don't think that there's really absolutes in I think there's a lot of life that does not exist for absolutes for me.
I do agree with that. I think that religion teaches us to be absolute.
Well, yeah, I mean, and unfortunately, I think that anything fundamental is challenging for me. Because to say that one thing is right over another thing being wrong, I'm just like, but who says? You can believe what you want to, but I don't think one should be indoctrinated into believing one whole thing and then you don't subscribe to something else, or there's no space for something else. And it can be anything. It can be religion, it can be sexuality, it can be politics. I mean, never before I just find that everything is just becoming more and more divisive. And it makes me sad, because at the end of everything, all we want is connection. And we've got all these things that are dividing us: money, politics, race, religion. You know, it's, I don't know, man. I feel like these skin suits get us into a lot of trouble.
Tell me about your formative years, because I believe that when I understand someone's childhood and how they grew up, that gives me context of who they are.
Sure.
You know, what was your formative years like, if you had to describe it in a word or a short sentence?
Independent.
Freedom?
Lots. There were parameters to exist within, you know. When the sun was going down, it was time to come inside. But we played. We were outside. I remember I had a very happy childhood with a rich, robust, imaginary world. My brother and I have always been very close. He's 2 years younger than me. My mother raised us to be friends. But I was swimming and climbing trees and playing in the garden and playing with friends and riding my bike and falling off skateboards and, you know, playing sport. And there was a lot of outside activity. And then inside activity would be, you know, art, drawing, making, you know, creating plays with my friends and forcing our parents to watch us for hours on end, you know, as they wanted to rip out their eyelashes because our content wasn't we were still working on it, you know. It was a free space, a good time. But I as an adult, you know, I recognize that my parents, I love them to bits and pieces. I absolutely adore my parents, but I didn't have a mom or a dad who would soothe me if I was necessarily upset. I got I don't know why you're crying. It's finished now. It's over. So I didn't learn to co-regulate my emotions until much later on in my life, and with the help of a lot of therapy. And it's still something I struggle with. Lots of self-soothing, dealing with my own world.
Were you supported?
I mean, I didn't want for anything. I had a wonderful education. There was always delicious food at the table. But my parents were very strict. Very strict. I mean, I have friends who still today will be like, oh my God, I'm still terrified of your father. I'm like, no, he's a ham now. He's like so chilled. You know, he was scary. And my mom was just as terrifying. They were both very, very strict. But that also comes down to the homes that they were brought up in.
Do you feel like you've broken the generational cycle of, I guess, emotional unavailability?
Definitely. And it's something that's very, very, very important to me. Not that I have my own children, but I do have a lot of friends with children, and I enjoy spending time with my friends' kids. It gives me an opportunity to see that I am different. You know, I'm more patient. I'm more, you know, my mom wasn't. I didn't find her very patient. You know, she's very quick to frustration, very, and it's not a criticism of her. I love and accept her as she is, but I am far more emotionally invested within the internal world of child. But I'm like that with people. Like I said, I'm very interested in what makes you tick, because I didn't have that. Like, the focus was always very external. How were my school marks? Did I win this race? Did I, you know, it was all external validation. There wasn't a lot of, and it's been a difficult, it's been a challenging topic to discuss with, say, my dad. Because he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. You know, and that's fine. Yeah. Because his experience was very, very different from mine. But I make a real point to hold space for people, because I didn't feel that way as a child or an adolescent or in my 20s from my parents. But that's why I'm incredibly blessed with the friends that I have. So it's taken a long time and many years and so much investment in the friendships that I have, because they're my chosen family, and they do provide the spaces that I didn't necessarily have growing up.
Did you crave one of your parents' love growing up more than the next?
Yes. I wanted my dad. I wanted my father to hug me.
Okay.
Sure.
And did you receive that love by performing?
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, I got all the affection from my mom. For sure. I mean, she would hug me to the point that it would hurt. But, and what's so interesting is that my father is very affectionate now with me. And maybe that's both of us growing. But yeah, the external validation that did come from doing drama at school was affirming. It imparted almost, it felt quite addictive, but that's very dangerous.
100%.
Because what happens when you don't get that affirmation? Then it's, I'm not good enough, that wasn't good enough, I'm terrible, and then it can take you down the rabbit hole of just, self-annihilation.
And you don't stop striving, trying to achieve the next big thing.
You know, I don't think for me, it's not about the next big thing. For me, it's about, I just want to get to the truth of it. I just want to be true in life and in my work. It's as I've gotten older, it's become far deeper, far more spiritual a process. One still wants to be successful. And by that I mean you want the stories or the performance to be received in a way that someone else feels seen through you. And if it's just one person, that's it. It's not about the big applause, the standing ovation. Yes, of course, they're very nice. They're nice. And they're rewarding. But it's when someone comes up to you and says, that stuck with me. It's made me think. It's made me feel something I hadn't felt. That's the magic there. When we can feel like you're a part of someone's process and slightly altering something, or just kind of just deviating off course a bit.
it's authentic, right? I mean,
It's the most important thing for me is authenticity and consistency.
Yeah, use the word truth and finding the truth.
That's it.
But in that, you can only do that if you yourself are being authentic.
Yeah.
And others around you are being authentic.
But it can be, that in and of itself can be gutting. And I always say every part comes along to change you. Whether it's a big change or a small change, everything's coming to evolve you. And I'm a very big believer that the universe is very exacting. And there are often times and spaces where you're resisting something. But it's in that resistance, that's the important part. You know, they often say, well, not they often, but the saying of the cave you avoid is the one with all the treasures. Mm-hmm. So when we're resisting something, we're avoiding something. It's like, go in there. That's the secret. That's the secret right there.
Yeah, but highly uncomfortable.
It's not meant to be comfortable. It's not meant to be, you know. Yeah, the diamond isn't formed because the coal's sitting there on the beach going like, oh, bro, this is so lekker. That coal is having a hot tub.
When you first started, or, you know, you got your big role at 16, were you prepared?
No. What was I prepared? I mean, I did drama. I loved drama. You know, I was a high school student. I had 5 other subjects that I couldn't have cared about. I just was like, what a vibe. I mean, did I have to learn lines and perform? And yes, was I prepared for that? Absolutely. But I was not prepared for what I was about to experience. Just let it happen. Also, you're too young to even think about it. Your brain's not even, you're still a fetus inside. You know what I mean? Like your brain isn't, there's no expectation. There's no idea because it's so unfamiliar. What I remember being stressed about was, I'm already so bad at maths. I'm going to be now even more delayed, even though we had tutors. I was stressed about getting back and having to go be back in class, you know?
To finish school.
I was like, I don't want to. I was like, I want to stay here for forever.
And was that the kind of seed that planted this belief in you that this could be a career?
No, that was it. That's it. I don't want to go into medicine anymore. I want, there is no other way.
You wanted to be a doctor?
I love biology. Yeah, I would have loved to have gone into, look, even though I didn't do the right subjects for it, but I could have gone into physio. I was like, I don't want to.
That 16-year-old, what would you say to her? Like, what words of encouragement or, you know, perhaps advice would you give to her?
I suppose what I would say to her is, don't create the thing you think people need to see. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to protect yourself. The right people are going to be there.
Inside out as opposed to outside in.
I don't think any of it has to do with the way I looked at the time, but I think it was about feeling like I needed to be a certain way to be loved.
Okay, proving yourself.
No. Scared to be who I am in the event that I would be rejected.
Okay.
And I would have liked to have not been, but again, like that's all part of the journey. Do you know what I mean? But I would just say it's okay. Know thyself and to thine own self be true.
The proving yourself part, do you feel like there's still some part of you that has to prove yourself?
Perhaps to myself, but I'm not sure anymore for who is the big question. And it's like, what would I feel like I would need to prove? It feels very egoic. Again, I just want to be true. And when you just focus on that element, it kind of liberates me from that preoccupation. Because for a long time, I felt I needed to prove my dad wrong because he didn't want me to go into drama. was like, no, doll, this is Mickey Mouse games. Like, what, you're a smart girl. Come on. And for me, I was like, so every time I booked a job, I'd be like, see, he's wrong. But that went away a long time ago. And also because my parents support me and they're my, they may as well have pom-poms, So
I think
we've all grown.
Do you think that early on, a better question to ask is, what sort of support do you need early on, starting off your career, and then?
Well, like I said earlier, my mother was very intentional about raising my brother and I as very independent beings. And maybe this is where part of the hypervigilance came from, I'm not sure, but I was very adept at just relying on myself. But that also creates a disconnection from people. So like I can identify now for myself, like my 20s, I was very disconnected. I wasn't investing. I wasn't allowing people to support me. I found it very difficult to say, I need you or I need help, because I'd been brought up to help myself. Could that have been different? Yes, it could have. But again, it's like I don't know why I would ponder it, because then I wouldn't be who I am now. Like the whole process is to look and go, oh, but if I change one thing there, then this whole thing changes. And I'm quite at peace with who this person is that shows up in front of you today. Do you know what I mean?
100%. Yeah, I think it's not about going back and changing things. It's about what did you learn from that lesson. That's what I think about.
So much. But also, again, life, hindsight is 20/20. You're not going to know it in the moment. You will only look back and go, oh, that's why. Mm-hmm. That's why. If we could do life in reverse, it would all make sense. But then you don't, you miss out. I mean, the help. I was watching a talk the other day that said, part of why we have to go through these experiences is because our consciousness forgets, and we have to awaken it. We have to awaken consciousness, but you have to live it to awaken it.
Experience it.
Yeah, like if you, I mean, let me go back to maths. Okay, horrible at it. Still can't even believe that I actually got a D on higher grade. But if you say, well, that's the answer, I'm like, that's great. But you have to get to the answer. You've got to work out the formula. Otherwise, you don't really get to that answer. Life is full of composites.
Yeah, you have to show your work.
Yeah, you got to show your work. And I say, and here's the kicker, is that I would show my work, but somehow I would make the mistake. So I'd get certain marks for showing, but I'd still get the answer wrong.
Such is life.
Such is life.
And you moved to LA in your 20s.
I did, when I was 27.
Okay.
Yeah.
How different was the environment, in LA compared to here?
Oh, wow. Then, huge, massively different. Also, I felt very foreign, and I also felt very exotic in that, yes, I'm South African, but they were like, but you're white. And I'd be like, am I? What? What do you mean? It was like, I felt a lot of otherness there, if I look at it retrospectively now. That was just baptism by fire. That was just, if I think back to what I did and how I lived and how I was making money and the hustling, I don't know that I would do that again. Like knowing what I know now, I don't know what kind of crazy possessed me, but I'm like, but you did it. But you did it. Like you can do hard things.
Yeah. Starting off anything, be it a career, business, you're starting from zero.
It's terrifying.
If you don't have perhaps, a silver spoon background and, kind of some sort of safety, comfort, it's tough. especially from a financial point of view, because you have bills to pay, you have to support yourself.
Look, I mean, there was a time when I'd gotten myself into quite a lot of debt because of my paperwork
In America.
in America, and I, but in terms of like, there were 2 occasions where my dad absolutely bailed me out, and it took away a lot of stress. Because that financial stress on top of trying to get a green card, on top of working several jobs at a time, you're going and auditioning, but nothing's really tracking there. I mean, it's just, there were weeks when I just had hives all over like it was so uncomfortable. It was so hard. But it was something that I had to do. I had to do it. I had to know. But it just became a very, I started to have this real fight with my soul and my ego. I was like, who's this for? What is this for? Is this what you want? It's not coming. You keep hitting against the same obstacle, thinking there's going to be a different result. And it just became so painful. And I was missing out on all the people that I love back home. Not to say that I didn't meet wonderful friends, and I do. I fundamentally believe that part of me going back there was karmic, to reestablish connection from possibly past lives. Because I have I met 2 women who I just absolutely love and adore, and I can't imagine my life without their friendship. Was that enough to stay? Never in a million years. And because I felt so other, I was like, okay, so I can write my own things and whatever. I said, but I don't feel like I belong here. And I felt such a strong yearning to be home. But it took 6 long years to get there, and a lot of therapy. A lot of therapy. And like just dark times, dark times.
How did you deal with the rejection?
I drank. I drank way too much.
It's healthy.
It's not healthy. And it's not something that I say and I have any kind of shame with anymore. But I was self-medicating to a very unhealthy degree. I wasn't coping. And then it was once I got myself into therapy that I started to better understand what was actually going on, what I was avoiding. And then I started making much healthier choices. Like I would cycle. So I would do like 30 miles, 5 times. So like, I'd be cycling a lot, 150 miles a week. And that cleared my head a lot. But then I would keep falling in and out of self-sabotaging behaviors. But that it was very much in relation to how unhappy I was in my relationship at the time, what was happening with my status. It was all deeply connected.
Status, did that affect?
Well, eventually I did get my green. Yeah, I did. Okay. Eventually I did get my green card. And then it was the most crushing thing. I got my green card, and the thing that had been prohibiting me from like perhaps booking something had always been my paperwork, because my O1 didn't fall under this umbrella of this studio or this network. And here I was, and I'd gotten the green card, and 2 weeks later my management dropped me. And I promise you now, something just went click, and I was like, that's it, I'm retiring. I'm giving up being an actor. This part of me is not dead. And I thought that I could make that work. And I just became so much more depressed than I already was. And thank God for my therapists there at the time, because that's what eventually got me to, it's like I say to like really close friends, I say, I feel like I had to go and bury my own ego in the desert. Like it did feel like I had to kill something.
What did therapy help with?
Talking.
Okay.
And probing. And waking up.
Going to uncomfortable places internally?
Yeah, totally. And just have someone ask someone very smart, highly educated and trained and skilled, asking just the right questions to start unlocking the doors that I was keeping bolted up, you know.
But we don't have the tools to understand how to unlock.
Well, no, that's why I think therapy is such a wonderful thing, and I find it still very hard to believe that there's still such a negative stigma to people getting mental health
Support.
Yeah,
I think
because there should be no shame or humiliation around it at all.
Yeah, I mean, from an older guy's perspective, you know, people that I've spoken to, you're seen as weak
Yeah,
because you don't know how to deal and cope with
I
all
think
your
for men
responsibilities.
it's especially more challenging.
100%.
You know, the patriarchy is not only against women; it's also against men too. So, and it's systemic. So it is deeply entrenched. It's like become this primordial part of us as a society. And I think it's a huge disservice. And if we're not breaking those molds, and I think that's part of the responsibility, right? Like you have to break the mold. You have to break. You said it earlier, the generational cycles.
Yeah, it takes a willingness.
Totally.
And then coming back to South Africa, and was it at that point that you got a role in Isidingo?
Yeah, I literally I'd been back for a month, and they offered me Angelique, and I was like, "What?" I've had so many no's. All I could hear were no's, and then I just got home, and they went, "Oh no, we're giving it to you," and it just felt. It felt like something went click click, and it just felt like this alignment. I was like, "Okay, I'm going to just go with this. Let's just go with the flow."
Yeah, that's so interesting because it seemed like in America you were pushing and forcing things.
Yeah, I was trying to fit a puzzle piece into the wrong puzzle.
And then you came home and you essentially let go. And then you got the role.
Well, I think I let a lot go before I got home. Okay. I left a lot on that side. Like a whole bunch of armor, a whole bunch of stuff that I had machinated and created to survive. And when I got back here, it just felt, I don't know, it just felt calm and loving.
And when you got back, did that confidence build again? And your belief in yourself that, okay, cool, this is what you could do for the rest of your life?
Look, that confidence and that belief there, I mean, there have only been one or two waning times, but it's certainly, I had forgotten myself. I'd become very displaced. And in coming home, it kind of resurfaced. But I'll say that is a constant challenge. That is a constant challenge, and I think in knowing myself and knowing how deeply rooted we are to what it is we do as actors, it unfortunately often validates our existence in the world. So that is a constant struggle. Like if you're not working, you're somehow not good enough. That is a conscientious, everyday awareness that I have. When I'm in my downtimes between jobs, that's hard work there. That is a lot of presence of mind.
It's almost not taking it personally.
You can't take it personally. You can't. Every part, you have to trust that every part goes to the right person. There are often things that will come across my table that I'll read and I'll be like, that is great, but I am not the right actor for that. I know this is going to sound very on fleek and it's all very like zeitgeisty, but whatever is meant for you is not going to miss you. So again, it's trust and surrender. It's not to say that in the surrender you don't feel sad or you don't we're human beings. We have lots of feelings, but Yeah, you can't. Sometimes you might remind someone of their ex-wife, and I go down digger. She reminds me of my ex. Can't take it personally. That's I promise you, some of these decisions are made with a lot of personal grievances that have got nothing to do with you.
How do you build that trust and faith? Because I feel like this is such a
Gosh, if I had the magic, if I had a piece of paper with all the right ingredients for that exact question, I would give it to you. I don't know what the actual answer is. I don't know that it's absolutist, but I guess it's faith. We have to have faith in something that we can't see. We have to believe it into being, right? That like when I see it, I'll believe it. Sometimes you have to believe it in order to see it.
I think a mistake I make is not looking at what already happened in my life and how many times I've been knocked down, but somehow I'm still here. I'm still standing.
It's because you're resilient.
Yes, resilient, but angels coming along my path and helping.
Sure.
People, things, last minute coming in clutch, that saying. That's the story of my life so far. It's things always happening last minute. And of course, I want to break this pattern moving forward.
So do you think you don't listen to yourself?
I do.
Do you just ignore it?
So the problem is that I can be very much action driven as opposed to just listening to that intuition, slowing down a bit, and then making a strategic decision on which is the best way to move forward.
Sure.
And that's how you learn.
Sure.
Look at my current business. I made so many mistakes last year.
But successful people are the ones who have failed time and time and time and time again. You go, okay, I didn't do it this way. I'm going to try it this way. I'm going to try it this way. It's tenacious.
Yeah, you don't stop.
No, you don't stop because there's something that you want. There's a thing that you're working toward. I have not several, many, too many to mention moments in my life where I have said to myself out loud, "Why are you doing this? This is no good," and I do it anyway. So I got a lesson, I got an experience.
Wait, but
although I'll say sometimes I don't. Sometimes I don't know that the experience may be worth it. Again, sometimes the means don't justify the end, or the end doesn't justify the means.
Got you. But there's a part of you that goes into it that's
knowing that it's a mistake. Yes.
Okay. Whereas for me, I was like, this seems like a good idea.
No, I'm telling you now. I'm not going to tell them to you because there are too many, and I don't feel. And that's not the point. There are so many where I'm like, this isn't going to work out well. And I've done it anyway. So I can hear myself, but I've spent a great deal of time ignoring myself, ignoring my own intuition.
So do you want to not make those mistakes again?
I don't ever want to do that to myself ever again. I don't want to do that. I want to, you were talking about breaking patterns. I want to break that pattern. I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah, I feel like
and I want to trust myself enough to go, and I go, okay. Don't do it. Okay.
It's shiny object syndrome. At least for me, like things appear shiny on the outside, but you peel away and it's actually not.
I think I always just think benefit of the doubt.
Okay.
Maybe I'll be wrong. I swear, when I say that sentence to myself ever again, I'm just going to be like, you're not going to be wrong, so just don't do it. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But like there is some kind of sense that I have heard it from whatever realm I've heard it, and I've gone and done it anyway.
Being independent growing up, do you struggle with trusting others, trusting situations?
Trust is earned. When it comes to people, trust is earned. Things are, we've all got to prove that we're worthy of being a space for somebody. In terms of like the universe, I have no other choice but to trust it, because I think not trusting it, that just makes things too hard. But in terms of people, it's people who hurt you. It's people who hurt you. For me, like the biggest betrayal of trust is if I've shared something with you and I've said, don't ever say something, don't ever. And if you share my secret, I can't. It's unrecoverable for me. It's just that kind of trust. Once that's broken, but it's earned, and I need, it's not that I have a problem trusting. It's just that it's earned. But when I trust you, I will trust you with everything.
What about integrity?
I think it's one of the most important values.
How do you deal with people that don't have integrity? And I'll give an example. So for some reason, this past couple of weeks, I've just been attracting people that have been saying something
And they do another.
and doing another,
Doesn't it make you crazy?
or not delivering. So saying that they're going to do something, but they don't. So of course I'm reflecting and I'm like, why am I attracting these people? What am I supposed to learn? Is it, not get sucked in, shiny object syndrome?
I think you're giving people the benefit of the doubt, and maybe you're also treating people, you're thinking that people are going to be how you are.
100%.
So there's hope.
Yes.
There's hope. But for me, consistency, and I said this earlier, consistency is very, very important. If your words and your behavior do not align, I don't trust you. And it's not even personal. It's like whatever. It's just, I don't. And it's so funny because I was actually saying on Sunday night, I was having a conversation and I said, I don't know what it is. I said, as I'm getting older, I'm just finding that the more inconsistent and inauthentic people are, the angrier I start to become. And she's like, yeah, I've been there. But as I've gotten older, she says, she's like, now I'm just like, oh, and I just walk away. I'm like, oh my word, I need to be walking away because I can't be like this grumpy little curmudgeon, shuffling around, mumbling to herself because I'm so frustrated because so-and-so doesn't have integrity.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't, I think, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time.
Yeah. Facts.
But I think also 3 strikes, you're out. I think everyone's...
That's generous.
I'll give you 3 strikes, you're out. And can I be honest with you? Everything in my life happens in 3s. It'll always be a series of 3s, and then I fall right off the edge. I don't know. Maybe I need to limit it. Maybe I need to go to 2. Maybe I need to just do it to 1. I don't know. I'll let you know. We'll see. We'll chat in a year's time. We'll see if anything's changed. If I've broken some patterns.
It's also people pleasing.
Well, certainly.
So people don't know how to say no, and that's, of course, you break trust that way because you make promises that you can't keep because you don't know how to say no. You want to keep the peace. But in actual fact, you're doing a disservice.
It's 100% correct. So no one can break your boundaries. You just can't uphold them, right? It's true.
Yeah.
And the reason that I know in my past, or even, it's something that is a conscientious effort, is I am saying no a lot more. I'm not overstretching myself. I'm trying to manage an expectation. I want to feel peaceful. I don't want to do something that's going to add to my stress. And I'm not talking about being responsible or dutiful in work or whatever. Even then, there are certain life responsibilities that you can't renege on, and you've got to show up. But in terms of if it's something social and I'm just feeling like I'm happy to say no. And if someone has a problem with it, then that's information for me. That's important information. But it is very, very important that you uphold boundaries because you'll get a better sense of who the person is that you're interacting with. Because if they honor it, then they're good to go. But if they push back on it, then you go,
100%.
This is about you and not about me.
Yeah. But once more, context. So if you had made a promise and, for example, if it's a social plan and then you cancel, I am going to ask why. I'm not just going to respect your boundary now because you canceled.
No, I completely... Okay, if we've got a social engagement, the only reason that I'm going to cancel is because if I've got food poisoning and I literally cannot leave my house. Otherwise, if I commit to something, I will do it unless there is a really, really unavoidable reason that I can't. But that's why I also say, don't just say yes right away. Don't say yes right away. Just say, can I come back to you? And really sit with something. Because I said yes a lot in my 20s and 30s. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. And then I ended up going to these things and having not a good time or feeling stressed or anxious. And I didn't know what I was feeling,
Yeah, you're not present.
you know? Like I have so many memories of being somewhere and having such a sore stomach. Like I would get a sore tummy. And I didn't realize that was actually anxiety because I actually didn't want to be there. And it's interesting because if I say, can I come back? If I enter into an engagement and my tummy gets sore, I actually remove myself. And then my stomach ache goes away. And it's interesting because the gut is the second brain, right?
Or the first.
Whichever. Yeah, it actually might be more honest than this one.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
But I think, setting boundaries comes with understanding or being conscious about what you enjoy and what you don't enjoy. Because you can't set boundaries if you don't know yourself.
Oh, that's what I say.
Right.
Know thyself and to thine own self be true. But also, it's very important to communicate.
Yes.
You can't just say, oh, I'm just setting a boundary. Like if something's, I'm going to explain to you, I'm going to have an open, honest, sharing, conversation. Because also, I don't want to disappoint you. But more than anything, I don't want to betray myself. I don't want to disappoint myself. So if I have to disappoint you, it's like, I'm afraid that I'm going to disappoint you now, and I'm really sorry, but I can't attend this function.
Yeah.
This is what's come up, and I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
And it's totally up to you if you say, well, then I'm never going to invite her again. And, understandable.
It's happened to me with some podcast guests.
Oh?
There's one guy in particular, and I'm not going to mention his name because he's quite famous, but I'm driving to the studio, and his assistant calls and says, sorry, he's not feeling well. So I'm like, okay, cool, understandable. Can we reschedule? No reschedule, no response. So of course that tells me a lot about that person. And
That's all you need to know.
I'm never going to support anything that the guy does anymore. Because I just...
It's just rude.
Yeah. And yeah, call me petty, but like, no. That's
No, but also like it's your time. Time is
100%.
valuable.
100%.
It's valuable, it's why look, sometimes if you're running late, if you've mismanaged your time, or if there's a terrible accident, and if I'm running late, I will phone ahead. I'll say, I am so sorry, but I arrived here 15 minutes early. The idea of being late is it is so uncomfortable for me to sit in that feeling. I hate it. But like, your time is precious. I don't want to ever make anybody feel like I don't value your time. It is a limited resource. We only have a certain amount of time. It could be gone tomorrow. I wouldn't want, when people are, like, I've got a 5 to 10 minute rule of if you're running late, but if it starts clicking into the 15, 20, 25, I then start fighting with myself as to whether or not I want to stay. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. But it takes discipline.
To stay or to be on time?
To be on time.
Does it? It's
Yes.
about managing your time. I don't know that it's as much a discipline as, like, say, training for a comrades. That's like real discipline.
Yeah, I think people take it for granted. So on this time part, if I don't value time as much as you do, I'm not going to put a lot of effort into being on time.
This is true.
Because I know, cool, no, we have an appointment.
Yeah, it's casual.
I'm going to be there. But you there 10 minutes early.
Yeah, but if I'm early, I don't expect someone to be early, but I do expect someone to be on time.
Yeah. So what I learned is we just value different things, and having empathy for that person helps us to self-regulate.
Of course, but I think empathy and kindness are also values that they're imperative to have.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it serves anyone. I don't think it helps situations to be a bully or to be overly dogmatic. There's always an amount of grace that we want to offer.
So I grew up watching Bollywood movies, coming from an Indian home. What was that experience like to work in your first Bollywood movie?
I mean, I was 23 years old. What did I know? I'd never been to India before. I'd certainly never worked on something with as large a budget. I mean, it was mad. It was insane. There was a lot of very strange diva-like behavior, which I did not care for.
From the other stars.
Which I didn't care for. Running 6 hours late because people don't want to be on set and because they're the star. No one can do anything about it. I found it, some of the parts were outrageous. Some parts were incredibly fun. It was amazing to see India in that way.
So interesting because we see one thing on the screen and then you hear about what it really takes to make that now.
My co-star just disappeared the one day. In the middle of a scene. He just disappeared. And then he arrived 3 hours later covered in blood. And I'm like, what has happened? And he went and slaughtered a goat. He slaughtered a goat for some of the villagers. And I was like, we were in the middle of a scene. I'm like, we were just changing the setup. I was like, what in the crazy, what? Hey? I was just like, I've never in my life.
That's so wild.
No, I mean, it was just insane.
Which part of India was this?
This was when we were in Jaipur. We were doing a lot of desert sequences.
On the north.
I mean, the one day in Agra, so we are shooting on the riverbanks of Agra with the Taj Mahal right there. I mean, it's magnificent. We've got a permit. We've only got X amount of hours for us to shoot the scene. My call time was 4 a.m. So I was in hair and makeup and we were ready. We were going to be ready to shoot by 7. 7 rolls around. 8, 9, 10. I'm like, what is happening? What is going on? No, my co-star's not working today. But he's on the call sheet. What do you mean? No, he's the constellation is very bad luck. Bad luck will befall him should he step onto set. I'm like, bad luck's about to befall him right now. And no one would do anything. Our director was literally charging up and down the riverbank. I was just like, it was like watching him far away, long distance, just like screaming, yelling to himself, completely powerless, ineffectual, just could feel his feelings. And I'm like, oh my word, I have been here since 4 a.m. We're meant to start at 7. It's like 10. We've only got a few more hours and then this permit runs out. I was tired. I wanted to go home. And I mean home back to South Africa. I'd had a whole bunch of this stuff. And I just went into his trailer. I knocked. And one of his gurus came and I was like, hi. He's like, hi. I said, where is he? He's like, no, he's here. I said, I'd like to speak to him, please. And he was like, let me check. And I was like, yeah, check. No, let her in. He's like, Shannon, hi, how are you? I went, why are you not on set? No, it's bad luck. I said, I don't care. I said, I need you to get on set. I said, nothing is going to happen to you. I said, if anything happens to you, I will be personally responsible. And I was just yelling at him. And he's like, I like how feisty you are. And I was like, get on set. Anyway, point is, 15 minutes later, he was on set and game to shoot. And my director almost cried from happiness. And I just was like, I don't understand. I want to just go home. I was like, I just want to go. Like, we just have a job to do. Let's just do it. Madness.
It's so disrespectful.
Anyway.
That's wild.
And we actually ended up having such a funny time. And we had to shoot it so quickly because we had run out of time and we were running out of light. Anyway, I did go and see the Taj that day. So it was lovely. They're like, please put on your little slippers and your little hats and you're like, it's beautiful.
I can't wait to go.
Have you never been?
No.
You must.
Yeah, I can't wait to go.
I must say.
On the bucket list.
India, there's something very soulful. Hard though. We talked about earlier before we
Poverty.
started shooting the disparity between the rich and the poor. In India, it's so bizarre because you are on these streets in Mumbai or Juhu, you've got these palatial apartments in marble with gilded gold, and then right on the pavement is someone sleeping on cardboard. And your brain just goes,
You know what the problem is? Amongst many things,
yeah, it's just one problem. Yeah,
people get immune to it.
you do. But you have to. You have to be anesthetized in order to survive it. It was the thing that I struggled with the most was the animals, cows,
Oh, the treatment.
skinny, like this famine-ridden cow with mottled hair and sores, chained to a tree, eating cardboard. And cows are sacred animals there. And my brain went, no, I couldn't. And the young homeless children, I could feel myself going, oh, I must not engage that. If I want to survive this, I must not engage that. Because I had a day, they had this team, the production team had very specifically said, when we get to New Delhi, there's going to be a lot of homeless children. And they said, if you see one, just know that there's a whole swarm of them right close by. They were like, don't give them anything. Don't give them food. What did I do? Walk out of the airport. And I had some dried dal, like salted dried dal, which is so delicious. And I had a couple of Mars bars. And this little girl, she couldn't have been more than 8 years old. She had the most startling, like resplendent green eyes. Her eyes took my breath away, but her hair was mottled and dirty, and she was wearing like this green little sari, and there were holes in it. And but her skin was beautiful. She was so beautiful. And she said, Madam, do you have some? I'm starving. And I was like, oh my God, yes. And I gave her the Mars bar. The next thing, there were about 30 children. And I was like, oh my word, what did I forgot the number one rule. And then I took out the remaining little bags of the dried dal and my other Mars bars, and then they were throwing things at me because it was absolutely harrowing. Eventually my driver came and wrestled me away, but I was in a flurry of tears. I was so upset with myself and the situation. And after that, I was like, in the car, if there were children came up to the window, I would just look away. I couldn't engage it. So yeah, you have to become anesthetized or you're not going to make it. Especially if you're an empath. If I could have fed each and every one, if I could have given them all Mars bars, I would have. But I shouldn't have given anything anyway. But also, it's so terrible. Mm-hmm. It's gutting. I'm not joking. And when I tell you that, I think I cried for about 3 hours. I was really, truly, deeply, deeply unhappy with the severity of that kind of poverty.
It's a feeling of helplessness.
Utter help, and it's despairing. It's just despairing.
Because you can't
horrible.
help everyone, and that's despairing, as you say.
And they were screaming at me. And then I was screaming at me in my own head. I was like, why did you do this? And I had genuinely forgotten.
Yeah, you're reminding me of Slumdog Millionaire. And
totally.
Watching that.
You know, when I saw that film, it was actually especially triggering because of some of the experiences that I had in India. It is, I must say, one of my favorite films, though. I mean, I absolutely love that movie.
And coming back to South Africa, fast forward a bit in your journey, and you get the role on The Queen and the River. And it's almost as if now, probably you were before, but now it's very evident that, you become this role model to young women, I heard you say that people were coming up to you and saying, oh, I became a lawyer because of you.
That's the most incredible thing to hear. Not I want it. Not I'm becoming an actor. I'm becoming a lawyer.
Does that kind of feed the joy of the role when you hear that?
So much. It's wonderful. We need more lawyers.
The role model part. I mean, that part really gets me. Because I feel like when we grow up, we have to see what we can become. And then, of course, we learn who we are and become our own beings.
Sure.
Right? So I feel like seeing someone like yourself and just being exposed to multiple different role models across multiple different careers, I think it's so important.
I couldn't agree more. That's why I really thoroughly enjoy working with school kids in their drama work, because it's like grassroots, That's where it all starts. And I remember how I'm going to show my age, being in standard 6 or grade 8, drama changed my life. I remember how important it felt to me to be able to discover and express in such a different way. And it's it's a wonderful way to also keep your own tools quite sharp and available. You've got to give back.
How important are creative outlets for you?
Very deeply.
What are some of the things that you do?
I paint. I write. I sing. I'd actually love to start sculpting, but I need to find the right kind of teacher.
Yeah, I think that something I struggle with is getting too much in my craft as opposed to the outlets, right? Because an example would be too much working at the office as opposed to getting out. Because when you get out, that's where the creative ideas come from, of how to improve things.
Yeah, you have to have exposure. You have to have exposure to other things in order to.
But we don't value it until we see the benefit.
Well, maybe that's your thing about balance. It's so interesting. Like I had a painting that I did recently. That was the first piece that I've actually had commissioned, because usually when I paint, I just paint for myself. And what was so interesting about that process was she had given me a very specific idea to work from. And I could feel my own self being hijacked by the sense of perfection. And there were days, and I'm talking hours, where I would just sit and stare at that canvas, completely paralyzed, unable to start, because of the idea I had built in my mind. And it's often something I say to actors. I say, don't come in with an idea of how you think this needs to go. You have to let it go. Just be present in the moment. And as an actor, that is very easy for me to do, okay? But this thing was staring at me. And then, I'd do layer by layer by layer. And then I would be like, that's not what I'm seeing in my head. And I'm like, you've got to let go of that image. This is the expression, the interpretation of your expression of this thing. And I found it such a struggle to operate within this, what I felt was like this very confined boundary. And I'm so glad that I did it. And I'm so glad that she was happy when I delivered it.
But it's relinquishing control.
Totally. Because I was like, I don't feel like I can control that it's going to look like this. And then what I could see in my mind's eye of what it needed to look like, eventually that started to become so very dull. It started to recede that I was like, I don't see it anymore. And then it kind of freed me up to do it. But I said to her when I was like, there's a lot of pain in there. I said, there is a lot of pain in that painting. And hers, mine. And, it was so interesting because she said to me, she said, when I presented it to her, she said, I have to show you something. And she took me outside and she got this, she had her assistant help her with a piece that she had painted many, many years ago. 14 years ago at a what was it, a soul workshop, whatever it was. And she goes, look here, and she unwrapped the painting. Oh, it was the instruction was paint your soul. And she goes, look at this. And she showed it to me. And she said, look what my soul looks like on this painting and compare it to what you've presented me. And I was totally freaked out. I was like, oh my God, that is madness. She's like, you've literally painted my soul. And I said, well, maybe will that explain why this has been such a painful process for me? And she's like, totally.
2020 and 2021, that was really tough. And reading about your journey, was that the time where you experienced depression?
Look, I wouldn't say that I suffer from, certainly not clinical depression, but yes, there have been serious bouts of very intense melancholy and depression, yes. There were some strong times there.
What do people not know about it that they should know about it?
What, depression?
Perhaps melancholy? Because clinical depression has something completely different.
Yes, something completely different. Look, I think here's the thing is that, one can feel sad and then one can be existing in a state of just total despair. And I think it's to know the difference of when it's maybe environmental, which things that you keep choosing that you should be doing differently. But there comes a time when you might stay in it too long and you now need an assist. You need maybe medication or you need something more. If you go too far down that rabbit hole for too long, you can't just come out on your own. You will need help.
Okay.
And it's okay.
Professional support.
Whether it's professional support or it's sharing something with a friend, but you need a space from people where you can be held and supported, and because it can be very confronting. It can be very, very confronting. So in 2000, I've had strong bouts, but I was with partners they were a lot of the cause of it. But again, I kept choosing to stay. So it's about being able to be accountable for the decisions that I was only capable of making then. But a lot of it came down to what I was living through or existing within or trying to survive and keeping very much to myself. Like I was only honest with one person in my life. And it wasn't enough. But I felt terrible humiliation. And once I had decided to leave, once I'd had like quite a transformative process with season 1 of Lioness, it did something. It did something in my brain chemistry. That's why I say every part comes along for a very specific reason. Like Samantha, and I've said this in a number of interviews, she gave me the strength to stand by the courage of my convictions. And I walked away, I ran away. There was actual running. And then in that moment, I was like, now I need to hold myself accountable. And then I told all the important people in my life what was happening. And I said, I'm telling you this because I don't want you to let me ever go back. I give you permission to stop me because I didn't trust myself. It's very difficult leaving an abusive relationship.
I believe that we only make a big change when the pain of something becomes greater than the pain of staying.
When the risk to stay. Yeah. So, but also it had become clear that I also didn't like who I was. I wasn't being integral to myself anymore. I felt like I was living 2 lives and both of them felt like a lie.
So far removed from who you truly are.
I just wasn't valuing myself to stay with someone who was physically violent toward me.
I think that, a lot of people don't leave because they don't think that they have a choice.
Look, I understand how hard it is to leave an abusive relationship. I've left 2. And the one was physical and the other was mental and emotional. But something happens to your brain. Your brain is not functioning at an optimal level. Okay? Like they've put people in MRIs to actually measure brain activity. Your amygdala, your hippocampus, your hypothalamus, they're not functioning the way that they should because your stress hormones have changed the functionality. So there were times when I would sit in my therapist's office and I'd feel like there's something wrong with my brain because I know different. And I would sit there and I would be so frustrated. And that is what was, my brain was not working properly. So even from a physiological standpoint, let's take away how difficult it is emotionally, or maybe you feel like you can't financially be independent, or whatever the factors are, and there can be many. The first thing is, if your brain's not right, it's going to make it harder, and that's where the help is imperative. And it doesn't help if you sit there going, I have so much shame and humiliation, I can't share this with anybody. Like, there is at least one person that you can share something with. And if it's going to be a therapist or a counselor, or like, go and do that. But you can't, nobody should go through those things alone. It's too hard. We're not meant to. We're not meant to. Every relationship is a mirror.
How much do you know about narcissism?
Very much, because I dated one. It was the worst 20 months of my life.
I've been doing a lot of research just because a loved one was exposed to a narcissist.
It's pervasive.
Very.
They isolate them, they alienate them.
Manipulation 101.
Oh, it's go on, tell me.
What else have I learned? Narcissists have flying monkeys around them.
Oh,
they call them flying monkeys.
Flying monkeys, and it does. It's a beautiful term from The Wizard of Oz, but it is. You have to cut absolutely everybody that has any association with them out of your life. And it's not to be mean. It's not too personal. It is just an absolute prerequisite so that they can't bait you, breadcrumb you, come at you again.
You know what's wild is, how do you see it, but those flying monkeys don't?
Firstly, flying monkeys are usually people who are unhealed empaths. So they're actually all very lovely people.
True.
Who struggle with boundaries. And if you go and you think about it, think about all the flying monkeys that you might have had to say goodbye to, sadly, they're probably all really lovely people who have tolerated and put up with this very dangerous personality.
That's exactly it. A lot of people pleasing.
You're constantly moderating, monitoring the way you speak, the tone of your voice, so that you don't cause an upset. The truth is, the upset's going to happen anyway because they want the attention, they need the supply, and they'll just ruin everyone else's day.
Oh, 100%.
It's unreal.
And that's been the case on many occasions.
I'm sorry, it's very, very hard.
Yeah, and I'm not the one that was exposed to it.
I know, but to even counsel someone who's going through
100%.
it, because that narcissistic abuse, brain damage, that is real. The amount of adrenaline and cortisol that you've got pumping through your body I couldn't understand what was happening to me. I'd have rushes up my arms and my legs. My stomach. I started to physically manifest the emotional torture and torment I was going through. It was just horrific. And again, I wasn't telling anybody. I was talking to less and less people. I was sharing with fewer and fewer people. I wasn't going out. I'd become completely isolated.
That's how they want you.
Of course. Because what they first covet in you, they're then not jealous of, and then they must destroy.
Goodness. Good for you for getting out.
Took 4 times. They say on average it takes between 4 to 7 attempts to leave one.
I can imagine a romantic partner being even worse. Let alone, like, if it's a family member, it might be a bit easier, but
Oh, I don't know. I think familial relationships, I think there is not enough support around how to handle a toxic family member. for some reason it's like, oh, blood is thicker than water. It's not how that saying goes. The blood of the covenant. It's about the covenant versus the water of the womb.
Yes.
It actually points to you choose the people that you want. Your family become the people you choose. But romantically, I'll just never do that again. I will just never do that again. And there were lots of red flags that I ignored. I was like, oh, look, it's a theme park. It's a carnival. This is going to be so fun. It was Jurassic Park, and I ran for my life. Horrible. Never want to do that again.
Another challenge in your life. Sorry that I'm bringing up so many challenges.
It's fun. That life is full of challenges. This is how we grow.
I recently saw on your Instagram, you went through a skin problem.
Oh, gosh, yeah. I mean, that's been years now, years and years and years.
Okay. What struck me was something in the caption about not being able to look at yourself in a mirror. And I was like, wow, that's hurtful.
Yeah, but also, look, I also think a lot of that was, and I'll be honest, I think also a lot of that had to do with being in a physically violent relationship, and so it was flaring up also because of what was happening emotionally and I really did. I battled to look at myself, not just because of what my skin was doing, but because I actually just felt so ashamed.
Isn't it so interesting how when our nervous system is not regulated, how
your body
we experience
but also and your body, metaphysically, your body is going to tell you what's going on, and you've got to, like Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life is one of the most important books in my home. I go to it for everything. If a friend says I've got this, I'm like, let's have a look and see what Louise says.
It's same with Gabor Mate. Have you read any of his stuff?
Well, look, I haven't read his stuff, but I love listening to Gabor. I mean, he said something the other day that just absolutely floored me. He says, it's not about feeling better. It's about getting better at feeling. I grew up as a child in a home where, why are you worried? Well, don't worry about your feelings now. It's finished. It was very illogical, very pragmatic. But when you get better at feeling your feelings, there's a stronger adaptation there for us, because our feelings, it's just information. It's just 100%. Information.
Yeah, strengthening that intuition.
Yeah, and also just like, why are you angry right now? Or why are you frustrated? That points to, like, there's an injustice here. Okay, what's the injustice? All this has happened. Oh, well, now I understand it. Okay, cool. Move on with my day. It's a roadmap. Our feelings are a beautiful roadmap.
100%. And I feel like what I learned from him is, amongst many things, is
he's brilliant.
triggers.
You're never going to eliminate the triggers.
No.
You just won't be reactive to them anymore.
100%. I thought that you can go to the roots of it and pull out that stem.
Oh God, I wish. That's not how trauma or wounds work.
You just get better at dealing with it.
You do. You get better. You become more responsive, and they're not as sharp. The edges will dull. But it's also, for me, trigger work is, like, if I'm in a relationship with you, whether we're in a romantic relationship or whether we're in a friendship dynamic, whatever it is, if you communicate to me, if something happens and you become upset and I say, what's going on? And you explain it to me and you say, this kind of made me feel, it triggered this. I'd be like, thank you for sharing that with me. I will be more mindful. Like, people need to be aware of the triggers that you communicate as well. And that's where a narcissist is so fascinating, because you'll tell them about it because you're in therapy, and then they use it against you. They weaponize.
Gaslight.
I mean, no, that's just part of the devaluing, the belittling. That's all part of the targeted, like, I will now destroy you aspect. So, it's but let's rather refer to someone who is not disordered, who is wholesome and loving and kind and empathic. If you had to tell me, if you do this, it's going to upset me, I will never do that. As long as it is within my power, I'm never going to do that, and I would expect the same. I would want the same. I would need the same. I would want the same.
One of the worst things that I think that you can do in a relationship, doesn't matter what the type of relationship it is, if you poke at someone's insecurities, that's just one of the most disrespectful things.
No, I mean, also, and what are you, a sociopath? What is wrong with you? Like, why would I can't look? And it's, yeah, I don't work. I'm not someone that you can tease me about things. Like, if there are things that I'm sensitive about, if you tease me about them, it's not going to work out well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between banter and, teasing.
There's sexy, flirty teasing, and then
Yeah.
there's another level of teasing, which is exactly what's the poking at the insecurity. It's that little bit of like, it's about diminishing, it's about belittling. I think when we're dealing with people, we've got to be very mindful. Look, we're humans and we make mistakes, but if I've communicated something 3 times and you're going to acknowledge 3 times that you're never going to do that again, you do it again, then it's my bad for keeping someone around.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, of course, on the other side, if you haven't communicated to me, then, I can't go around.
I mean, my therapist said the most wild thing to me a number of months ago. She said, an unvoiced need, when that goes unmet, is much better than encountering a voiced need that still goes unmet. So it's about communicate, because it's like, she's like, you're not allowing yourself to prove yourself right or wrong.
100%. Because I'm also not responsible for how you feel.
No, firstly, no one's responsible for anyone else's feelings. It's not for me to manage your emotional world. It's not, but I need to be aware of it. And the more I know, the better I can do, And it's the same towards self. It's like we can't be so hard on ourselves. So if you didn't know then, it's okay, but you know now. You didn't know what you didn't know.
Yeah, I'm extremely hard on myself.
I brutalize myself. Are you kidding? I have to act. It has only been in the last couple of years where I'm like, I will be gentle with myself. I will be gentle. I'm not going to be like all hard. I'm not going to go into that like, you should do better. Like that's the inner child work,
Do you think so?
Definitely.
Yes.
Like, what's that voice? Like, what's that voice that goes, you should have done better. You should have known better. Who's that person? Because I bet you can answer it.
Yeah, 100%.
And where does it come from? Being little.
True, right? But how long are you going to blame the
Well, that's the
child
whole thing.
for-
But you can't. No, well, that's the thing. It's not. You can't blame the child. That child. You can't blame the child, and you can't keep blaming your parents either. There's a time when you have to reparent yourself, and you have to give yourself the love you need now, and the love that they tried their best, but they couldn't give you the love that you necessarily needed. But you can give yourself the love you need.
That is the answer. I agree with you on that.
And the answer is 5. There was all the workings of the formula.
Shannon, the last part of the podcast is called the Fast Fire.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you these quick questions, and if you could answer in a word or a short sentence,
Okay.
that would be amazing. If you could make one rule that everyone has to follow, what would it be?
I don't know if I just be kind.
Is that your PG-13 answer?
Yes, I had to take care of some of the language.
What's a contrarian truth that you believe to be true?
Well, it's this, is that two opposing truths can exist at the very same time.
Yeah, that's a good one. Not many people would agree with you on that one.
2 things can be true at the same time. Disparate, opposing, both true. That's why life can be very confusing.
What does your ideal day look like? Or what would your ideal day look like if there's no constraints in terms of responsibilities, even budget? Like, just no constraints.
Nice little 12-kilometer walk, music in my ears, have a couple of conversations with some friends, maybe have a meal with one of my besties, have a phone conversation with my parents, maybe catch up with my brother, maybe go see a movie or go to a gallery, see some theater. I'm a very simple person. Maybe fly off to Italy and go for a really nice, pasta, come back. No, I would love to go to Italy. That's bucket list.
I was expecting some acting in there.
Sure. But you said there's no work constraints. Is
that work?
Showing up can sometimes be work.
Tripping.
But if you had to say to me what would be my ideal work day, that would be...
No, wasn't the question.
Yeah. A rehearsal in the morning, a performance in the evening, or maybe on set all day, shooting some incredible sequence.
Rome for dinner.
Right. Yes. Off to the piazza.
What's your advice to someone starting off their career? If you could say a few things to that person, acting specifically.
Go study, read a lot, watch everything. Go and focus on learning the skills and harnessing the skills. Be open, but study. Go and be in that practical world. The theory is also important. And also, go in there, be honest. You've got to have talent. Whether it's talent to write or direct or produce, or you've got to love stories. And you've got to be fascinated by journey and people. But go and study.
Upskill.
Totally. And if you can't, look, this is the thing, is that it also, there's some people who can't afford to study. But we can still consume. You can watch, you can look at online, listen to actors in interviews. You can learn just by, we have such a huge amount of access to the world because of our devices. There's nothing that you can't look up you can look up anything now and it's just there. But there's a practical thing that has to happen, and that is forever. It's forever. You are constantly reconfiguring, sharpening, updating the tools in the toolkit.
Yeah, 100%. We never just know everything.
I tell you, the older I get, the less I know. There's just so much. There's just so much.
Shannon, thank you. This was amazing. Thank you for sharing your story with me.
No, you said this is going to go deep. I was like, I don't know if you realized how deep we're going to go.
The analogy you gave, the ocean. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not puddles.
I'm so relieved.
Thank you for this. This was
Thank
amazing.
you so much thank you for reaching out.
Yeah, and thank you for the work that you're doing and continuing to inspire people to not just act, but become lawyers and professionals.
Thank you. Yeah, let's just all be true. You know?
We do need more role models, so keep going.
I'll do my best.
Thanks, Shannon.